life. Hattie Mae Thornton, she went by Hatsie. She never liked her name. In fact, the only other person she knew named Hattie Mae was the maid on Gone with the Wind, I think. But we appreciate you being here and celebrating her life. She was a special lady. My mom was born January 12, 1923 at El Dorado, Arkansas, and lived there the first few years of her life. I think she was a teenager when her family moved here to Rodessa. And she really didn't want to have to leave El Dorado. She loved that town. And I know very little about her childhood. About the only thing I know is we were talking earlier, my grandfather, her dad, earlier in his life struggled with alcohol. And mother was the peacemaker. Other family members tend to confront him and he would get very angry. But my mom was the one that would always just console him and try to make him feel better. He eventually gave up drinking. I never even knew he was an alcoholic because by the time I came along, he wasn't doing that. But mother was the one, I think she and her dad were very close. They loved each other. She looked a lot like him, as a matter of fact. They moved here. Mom finished up high school here, and then she went to work in Rodessa at a drugstore. At one time, Uncle Bob owned that. I don't know if he did at that time. It was during the war. And soldiers would come through here on the train, and she worked as a waitress. They had a little diner there. In the course of that, she met my dad. My father didn't have to go in the Army because he had asthma, and my dad was working for United Gas Pipeline here. And because of the shortage of vehicles, he drove a covered wagon. And they met. He worked with a guy named Mose Holt, and they worked together. In fact, my mother thought my dad was a preacher when she met him because he carried a Bible everywhere he went. And they got married and had my oldest, Bill. And then a year later, my sister, who couldn't be here today because she's sick, she's ill. And so then they eventually ended up moving to, Bill was actually born right here in Vivian at a house that was a hospital way back when, close to the junior high. Mm-hmm. They moved from there to Carthage, Texas. And that's where I was born, at Panola County Hospital. And we lived there as a family of 5 when I was little. And my mom probably enjoyed that stage of her life more than any other stage of her life. She loved cooking and cleaning and taking care of her family. And we had a great childhood as a result of that. In a few minutes, I'll read a letter from my sister Kay that describes a lot of that. I remember less of it because I was so much younger. And then after 21 years of marriage, my mom and dad divorced. And that was, up to that point, it was the hardest thing my mother had gone through. It was very difficult. In fact, mother, at that time, I think people didn't know it, but she went into depression. I don't think she even knew it. But I would come home from school, and my brother was off work, and then Kay was going to high school. Kay was a junior high school, my brother was a senior. I was 10 years old. And I would come home, and mother would be sitting in a dark room by herself. And she would come out and she would cook for me. She'd go back in that room. And after months of that, I can still remember her coming out to watch TV with me one night. So just a few years ago, hey, thanks for coming. Just a few years ago, I asked her, I said, Mom, what happened? And she said, one night I was sitting there and I thought, I've got kids to raise. I've got to go on with life. Mm-hmm. And so she really just forced herself out of that state of mind. And my brother got drafted in the Army. My sister went off to college. And so mother made the decision that we would move to Vivian because we had relatives here, Sandra and Sammy, and relatives here. And I really didn't want to move because I'd lived there all my life. But it was looking back, it was one of the greatest decisions Mom ever made. We moved here, and they were opening Summerfield, a manufacturing plant. And Mother felt like she could get a job there. So for 3 months, we lived with my grandparents up in Zilks. And I'll never forget Mom coming home and saying she'd gotten a job. And so we moved, we found a rent house. In fact, we passed it, 606 North Pine. And we rented that house for $55 a month. And we moved in there, and it was a great place to grow up. Mother worked at that factory initially 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. Stood up all day long. She would deliver pants that had been rejected back to the people who'd sewn them. And so she stood on her feet on concrete, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. I still remember when she finally got Saturday afternoons off. We were so excited just to have that time off. She never complained about it. And she also, she had to be at work at 7. She left the house at 6:45. It's 5 minutes from our house. She would come home and eat lunch, and she had to be back at 1, and she left at 1:45. And took 5 minutes to get there. And so I asked her one time, I said, Mom, why do you do that? And she said, well, they have a whistle that they blow when we're supposed to go to work, and I always want to be in my place. And she was incredible. She would complain about being tired from time to time, but never complain about her job. She was always grateful to have had that job. And then she eventually, the plant started closing down, and she was without work. And it was during that time period that she was involved in an accident at what was Piggly Wiggly. And my grandmother and Mom were walking, Mom was walking out of the store. My grandmother was still in there. And a lady was pulling in to park, and back then you parked straight up to the store, and a lady, her foot slipped off the brake, hit the accelerator, hit Mother, and the car proceeded to go 17 feet inside the store. What saved Mother's life was that she was tiny. My mom we looked like we were different planets. She was 5 feet tall, weighed about 100 pounds, and when the car hit her, it flipped her up on the car, which saved her life. And we got a phone call that she'd been in that accident. Sandra called us. So my sister and I, we lived in Dallas. We drove over here, really not knowing whether she was going to be alive or not at that point. But we got here, and she had broken her pelvis and then severely broken her leg and knocked a piece of bone out of her leg. And it would never completely heal. She would be crippled from then on. But amazingly, she wasn't cut anywhere. It could have been so much worse. And my mom's attitude was she was always grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. She was in a hospital for 3 months, doctor's hospital in Shreveport. She went through 7 surgeries trying to save that leg, and they saved it, but she would be crippled the rest of her life. I was telling these guys, one of the things that made me appreciate my mother so much, when she finally came home from the hospital, it was right around Thanksgiving, and she couldn't walk, so I carried her in to her den, and I put her down in a chair. And I looked up, and right above that chair was a picture of me when I was 13 months old. My mom had me, and she only weighed 100 pounds, and I weighed 34 pounds at 13 months. And she carried me all those when I was little. And I was just, it made me so appreciative of her. My sister said I was an accident. I don't know whether I was or not. I was 7 years younger than them. I thought it was very intentional. I felt like my parents looked, and they had this really cute, kind of blonde-haired, good-looking little boy, and then they had this very attractive girl with thick hair and brunette and beautiful blue eyes, and I thought they said to themselves they need a red-headed, freckle-faced bucktooth in this family, so they had me. But I never felt like an accident. My mom and I were very close. We spent a lot of time together. So Mom continued to live here. We were living over there. She lived here by herself until she was 94, and she couldn't have done it without Sandra and Sammy, always here. Sandra is my mom's sister. She's 17 years younger than my mother, but there's never been sisters separated by more age who were closer than these two people. They had a great, wonderful relationship, and we'll always be indebted to you and Sammy for taking care of Mom for all these years, and especially these last few months. A few years after that, my mom handled tragedy, and she had difficult tragedies in her life, and she handled better than anybody I've ever seen. I mean, she decided to have a good attitude about it. My dad left, that crushed her. And yet I didn't want to be around my dad when he left. Honestly, I was so upset with him. And I'll never forget her saying, he's still your father, and you need to love him. And so I did. But the most difficult was we lost my brother when he was 28 years old. That was the most difficult thing Mother went through, because it's the hardest thing any individual ever go through. And it was hard, but she kept moving forward. And you never get over that, losing a child. But Mother just kept moving forward in life. She continued to live here. My mom, by the way, was the most disciplined person I ever met. When she hurt her leg, she wanted to continue to make sure she stayed in good physical shape. She knew she couldn't walk a lot. So we bought her an exercise bike. And she would ride that bike a mile in the morning and a mile in the afternoon. She did that from the age of 58 until just a few months ago, 94 years old, riding that bike every day, at least a mile. I calculated that she rode over 10,000 miles. She rode back and forth across the United States 5 times on that bike with a brace on her leg and crippled. And she continued to live here. My mom loved her living here. She continued to drive. She was independent. She didn't wear glasses or hearing aid. Every now and then the light was bad. She had reading glasses, otherwise she had glasses, hearing aid. And lived here just a few months ago. And then back in the fall, she fell one Sunday, and we got a call that she had fallen. And as it turned out, she went to the hospital, told us, Mom, you need to go to the hospital. She ended up going, she had pneumonia. And when she got pneumonia, it really took a lot out of her. So we ended up moving her to a nursing home over where we live in October. And she's lived 10 minutes from us for the last 4 months. And her health kind of just continued to decline. And then last Monday morning, she passed away. But those 4 months were some of the greatest months in our life, honestly. Pat and I spent time with Mother every day. And our family was great. We had a really good family. But our family was what you might call a little disengaged emotionally. You never told each other you loved each other. You just didn't. You loved each other. And Mom showed her love. She had, if you know anything about love language, hers was gift of service. She cooked, she cleaned. She never ate with us. My kids were talking about they never saw Nana eat. She was cooking and cleaning the whole time we were eating. But because of that, when we lost my brother, I said, I'm going to start telling you guys, Kay, and my sister and Mom, that I love you. And so we did. And you could tell even then it wasn't easy. But these last 4 months, every day, I got to go by there, and I would always kiss Mom when I get there, because we weren't a very affectionate family either. And every time I would say, Mom, I love you, and she would say, I love you, and told Pat she loved her. So we're so grateful for these last few months in her life, and my mom is an inspiration to me. You talk about, she could have written a book about attitude, because during the most difficult times of her life, she chose to have a good attitude and to continue moving forward through things that most people would have taken down. And I'm so grateful to have gotten to share my life with her. The best qualities that I have in my life are because of her, actually. And so my sister wrote a letter. My sister, as I said, she's sick today, and so she couldn't be here, which she really regretted. But here's what she wrote. She said, my mother, she is my best and closest friend. We've been talking over the phone every day for 8 years. When Michael died 8 years ago, she asked me to promise I would call every day. Sometimes we talked for hours. Growing up, Mom was the best mom we could have. She was always at home, cooked 3 meals for 5 people a day. When we came home from school, she always had homemade cookies or peanut butter fudge served warm, and you could smell it when we walked in the door. And she always had a Dr. Pepper for us. She'd put in the freezer for us. In fact, one of my greatest memories was my first day of school. We rode the bus together to school, my brother and sister and I. Of course, they were 7, 8 years older than I was. But I only went a half day that first week, so I had to get on the bus coming home. That was terrifying. Because I have no sense of direction. I wasn't sure if we were going to the right place or not. And I'll never forget turning the corner, and I can still to this day see my mom sitting there, thanks Tom, sitting there in a sundress in a lawn chair waiting for me to get home. So Kay says, Mom always dressed up, straight black dresses, black high heels and white pearls. I don't remember that, but she did dress. My mom was very particular about how she looked. You never saw Mother wear a robe or any of those things. She got dressed up every day as if she was going somewhere. And my mom was a very introverted in many ways. She's very nice, but she was very much a loner. She spent most of her time by herself and was very content with that. She was an immaculate housekeeper. Everything was spotless. She cleaned all day long, and she enjoyed making things look pretty. When she went to work for Somerville Manufacturing, she got up early so she could dust the house and her car, plus fix a full breakfast for Charles. Actually, I ate ding dongs most of the time. That was my choice. I wanted to. Laundry for 6 people was huge. She stayed on top of it. She did. I'm telling you, my mom kept everything clean, spotless, ironed. She said she was faithful to her church. There's no doubt about it. My mom was committed to the Mormon faith, and she didn't mind talking about it. We didn't share some of the same beliefs faith-wise, but we had great respect for each other. And she was very committed to the church. And she tithed. You know, this next week, I pastor a church in the Dallas area, and my message is on tithing. And I tell them, I came to know Christ as my Savior when I was 26, and I immediately started tithing. I didn't think twice about tithing, never considered it, because my mother tithed her entire life. As a single parent with a factory job, you just did that because you appreciate what God had done for you. So she taught me that, among many other lessons that she taught me. She loved reading scripture. She did so daily. In fact, she had some little devotional guides she would read. And the last 4 months, she had a Jesus Calling book that Pat had given her, and she'd already been through it once or twice. But every day, she and I would read to her. And she would always say, "That's really good." I said, "It was good." We'd read and talk about the Lord. Her hobbies were game puzzles, and especially crosswords. My mother would not watch TV during the day because she never wanted to get in that habit, so she wouldn't turn the TV on until 5 o'clock. So she cleaned her house, and then she'd work puzzles. She wanted to keep her mind active, and her mind was sharp all the way up to the very end. And drawing. My mom, in her later years, she discovered that she was kind of an artist. Mother could draw. The best thing she drew was cartoon characters. She could draw a cartoon. You look at a cartoon character and draw it. She also did pictures of the kids, and we've had some fun looking at those. Because she wasn't as good with humans as cartoon characters, but she thought she was. Kay says, as you know, tragedy visited Mom's life a number of times, and each time she faced it head on. She was brave, courageous, and faithful, trusting God every minute. Her faith in God never wavered. As I reflect on my mother's life, I'm missing some of this here. As I reflect on my mother's life, maybe this is it. The Apostle Paul summed it up best. He said, when Paul said in Philippians 4:11, and when Kate told me this, I said, Dad, there's no verse in the Bible that better captures who my mother was. But Paul's in prison in Rome. He's never going to leave. He's going to die there. And he writes this little letter to the church in Philippi about joy. And then he says this. He says, Paul says, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am in to be content therewith. And my mother was the most content person with whatever state, whatever God dealt her. She was always very, very content and thankful for the state she was in, regardless of what it was. Now, this is my wife, Pat, and you've written something you want to share with them. Pardon me? Yeah, stand and face them. Pat and Mom got to be very close over these last 4 months. No one took better care of Mother than Pat. And she had her 95th birthday on January the 12th, and we had a big birthday party. And of course, Mother said, well, that's too much trouble. But she enjoyed it. She loved it, and we had a good time.
There's so many things to admire and to love about Hatsie. I was so grateful to be her daughter-in-law. I admired her so much, how she loved her children, Kay and Charles and Bill, her family, and of course her grandchildren. She adored them. One thing Hatsie always did that I thought was so amazing was she would always send birthday cards every year. She never missed a year, and she always picked out the perfect card for you. She didn't just go grab one, she got the perfect card. I always thought that was just so amazing that she would always do that. She taught me many things in life, and the last 4 months were no exception. She finished well. She moved to the nursing home close to us, and that represented to her a loss of independence. And for her, independence was of great importance. So this move really actually represented a loss for her. But once she settled in, she did what she does best. She made the best of her situation. To me personally, these last 4 months were a gift. Hatsie and I saw each other every day, even if it was just for a few minutes, and we bonded. Charles and I have been married how long?
34 years.
34 years. I never can remember. 34 years, and we really bonded. We became close. And there was just a very sweet relationship. Every day when I came in, I would fix what she needed. I would get her crackers ready and her crossword books and just whatever she needed. And every day when I finished, she would thank me. She would say, thank you so much. She was so grateful for everything that I did. So this independent woman was now dependent, but she showed so much grace and gratitude. And I hope in my life that I can emulate that. So I just want to say that I've loved her and that I will miss her dearly. And I am forever grateful for the last 4 months.
Absolutely. And we wanted to give anybody an opportunity, if they want to share anything about Mom, an opportunity to do that. You don't have to feel obligated to, but if you have a story or something you remember about Mom or what you appreciated most about her, give you just a few minutes to do that, and then we'll turn it over to Bishop Gaddy from the Mormon Church in Atlanta, where Mom attended to dedicate the grave. But anybody want to share something about Mom that they remember? Or we've been talking a lot, so they've already shared a lot of stories. But these people, Caroline, you can if you want to.
It's just short. But
That's good.
today we celebrate my Nana, Hattie Mae. Tragedy struck you several times in life, but you took each with grace and bravery. You inspire me to be a better woman. May I carry your legacy with as much tenacity and grit as you showed.
Thanks, sweet Caroline. She loved you guys so much. Anybody else? Well, thank you, Sandra and Sammy. As Sammy's not here, he's keeping kids, keeping grandkids. But thank you for taking care of Mom all these years. She could not have lived here by herself without you. And then when she went in the hospital, we couldn't have done it without you guys. And y'all, she just loved you and appreciated her relationship with you.
I'm gonna miss her so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
She was so special.
Yes, ma'am.
She was my visiting teacher years and years ago. But you were speaking about cards and her always being able to pick the perfect card. I still have a lot of her cards because they were always so sweet and just seemed to have been made for just what she was trying to tell me and for what I was getting out of it. So I've kept a lot of her cards.
Thank you for sharing. She was. I mean, Mother would not miss a birthday or holiday. She would always send it. It was always on time or early. But she would always go, and she looked to find that special card to send. She was very dedicated to that. Yeah, Vicki.
And I just love the way she loved to have even the extended family together. And she and the sisters and the brother would get together and with all of us and just laugh and just have such a great time together. And even though at times her heart, I'm certain, was breaking.
Yeah, we're blessed. Mom had the two sisters, and then her brother, who just passed away a few months ago, who was just 2 months away from being 100. And I tell people all the time, we're blessed to have such a great family. And it's because of them, really, in that group of siblings, that we just get to enjoy life together. And unlike some families, we're close with our second and third or fourth cousins, and most of them don't even know who they are. And because of the lives that they lived and how much they enjoyed family. My mom loved pictures, and so she had albums and albums of pictures of all her family. She treasured those, so we've kept those and enjoy. When I would go see her in the nursing home, sometimes I just take one of those. We just go through it, you know. So thank you. Anybody else?
Charles, I just wanted to say that, you know, I was young when your mother, I mean, she was my aunt, as was Dot, and I think I gave them a lot of trouble. They kept me when I was a kid. I was the only one there, and there's a lot of bad stories going around about me. But Hatsie was right there, and I always remember that she was not the one that I was throwing rocks at as a kid, but you know, she was always very special. And I don't know, she and Dot and Dad all, I guess, had their personalities from their mother. and Sandra,
Yeah.
of course, but Sandra was like my sister, so I had to think about that.
Yeah. Sandra is his aunt, but she's younger than he is. Our family tree got all messed up.
I didn't want to talk about that. So I was in the world before they had their last child. But they all, including Sandra, all have their personalities from Mama Bill. And they all had great faith, have great faith.
Definitely.
Sandra does.
Definitely.
And they were just different type of people that you grew up with, and it made you feel good to be with them. You know, I wasn't around Hatsie, you know, as an adult, but that much that we come over. But we always enjoyed being with her. She always took the time to show us her pictures of you all, and I always admired her strength. As everyone has heard today, what all she went through and how she never complained, never heard her complain at all. So she was a great woman and one we could all enjoy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bobby. Anybody else? Mr. Gaddy, I'm going to turn it over to you. And, I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
If you want to bow your heads with me, please.